Saltburn, the new film from Academy Award winner Emerald Fennell, is a solidly directed and yet ultimately forgettable movie because it relies far too heavily on things we've seen before.
Dickie Greenleaf?
Who's that?
It's Tom. Tom Ripley.
Tom Ripley?
We were at Princeton together.
Okay. Did we know each other?
I need to talk to you. Smile.
Federico! Come stai? Bene! Ciao bello! Come stai?
Oh, God, don't you want to fuck every woman you see just once?
Only once?
Absolutely once. Ciao.
Tinny sort of word. Oh, sorry, old man.
Really, Mansfield?
Well, she's got to come to terms with these things.
Hey, how's the peeping?
I love Marge.
You love me. You're not marrying me.
Tom, I don't love you.
No, I don't mean that as a threat.
To be honest, I'm a little relieved you're going. I think we've seen enough of each other for a while.
Probably shouldn't. Probably shouldn't, He lies. And that's his... And half the time he doesn't even realize he's doing it. And today, I really started wondering whether he may have killed Freddie. He would get so crazy if anybody would contradict him. Well, you know that. You know that. You know that.
Mr. Greenleaf feels that there was a silent promise in Dickie's letter to you, which he intends to honor. He also intends to transfer a good portion of Dickie's income from his trust into your name.
There is nothing quite as beautiful as cash. Some people say it's folly, but I'd rather have the lolly. With money you can make a smash. There is nothing quite as wonderful as money, money, money. There is nothing like a newly minted pound. Money, 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 money. Everyone must hanker for the butchness of a banker. It's accountancy that makes the world go round, 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 round. You can keep your Marxist ways, for it's only just a phase. It's money, money, money makes the world go round. Money, 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 money.
And now you've seen Saltburn. I just saved you a few bucks, mate. Pay it forward. While there are variations on the Ripley story, like subtler kills from the main character Oliver, and the Python-esque satire is specific to the time it's set in, like having rich white people singing rap songs, it still is devoid of anything more to elevate it. It's quite hollow at its core. This is to its shame, as Emerald was actually paid for the script she wrote. So where's the effort? Losers on the internet like this one guy from Australia I heard about can make low-effort videos on a crappy laptop. But you must demand more when there's money at stake, otherwise why should anyone bother going to the movies in the first place? We can get all our entertainment for free on YouTube and Twitter, so what sets your product apart? Nevertheless, I do have compliments, and I'm going to start with them because most people switch off halfway through a video, and I'd like to leave them with the positive stuff in mind. Strength number one of Saltburn is that Emerald Fennell wrote it with one hand down her pants, and yes, I'm being serious. Consider this part of the script. He keeps going. Benicia is entranced. Lucky for you, I'm a vampire. Oliver draws his hand away. There's blood on his fingers. He licks them. He rubs his hand on her chest, puts his fingers in her mouth as his other hand disappears up her skirt, and Benicia arches back, enjoying every moment. He leans in to kiss her. When he pulls away, you've got a little something there. There's blood on her lips. Benicia chuckles, and Oliver disappears under her skirt. Sweet baby Jesus. No one touch me. I'm barely holding it in as it is. I didn't have period cunnilingus on my bingo card when I went to see Saltburn and was very pleasantly surprised. Sex scenes nowadays are dull affairs, and I think most of the pushback to nudity in cinema is because the scenes themselves have become perfunctory. Like the writers knew you would be bored with their work, and so they decided to throw some tits on screen, rather than them being truly interested in eroticism. I've read more Anais Nin than I'd care to admit, so I appreciate it. Fennell has written a sex scene that was once hidden away in the imaginations of old maids in the privacy of their bathtub, with a cucumber in one hand and the head of a vacuum cleaner in the other. If you can craft a scene that's hot on the page, then you can rest assured it'll leave everyone flustered in the theatre. And believe me, the people I saw Saltburn with started panting. A lot of babies are going to be born 9 months from now. If Emerald Fennell turns the tide on population decline in the West through the power of cinema, then may God bless her and may her womb overflow with kings and queens. See? I can say nice things. The second strength is Fennell's direction. This shot from Promising Young Woman was one of the few evocative images in her debut. That's not a criticism. Even great directors started off with some standard fare. Just go watch Kubrick's early work. And fortunately for us, Fennell has leaned into this with Saltburn. There are so many gorgeous settings, and she shoots wide so we can be immersed in that world. She fills the frame with multiple characters so that we can study their reactions as others speak and glean information about the real thoughts and intentions of the people in this world. Furthermore, Fennell positions actors so that they become one with their environment, producing visuals like the Promising Young Woman reference, which could be described as painterly. She turns the world into a fever dream straight out of something like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in the third act, and it's pitch perfect for the story she's telling and the mindset Oliver has during these events. It's good stuff, and I think she deserves praise for that side of the equation, especially given the reported budget of $10 million. You got your money's worth there, as she certainly put some thought into her images. Top-notch work, Mrs. Fennell. Move to the front of class. The third strength is, of course, the actors. Fennell wisely determined that Barry, I can't pronounce his last name, give me a break, is it Keoghan? Is a sex symbol in the making. There's something about that guy that just makes you think, yeah, he fucks.
This is the guy in the house doing all the fucking, am I right? You know I'm right. This guy fucks. Thank you.
At the same time, we've seen Barry's pathetic and darker sides in films like The Banshees of Inisherin or The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the latter of which I really enjoyed, and so again he brings those tools to bear in Saltburn to great success. The guy can act, and we can love and hate him in equal measure because the entirety of the human experience can be expressed through his face, voice, and body. We're all very fortunate for having Barry Keoghan in this film because he's the real deal. Jacob Elordi joins in on the action with his work as Felix. The most interesting thing to me was how Felix's voyeuristic interest in Oliver's sad story was not readily apparent on the page. Elordi brings that out on screen as we can see how Felix plays nice but is only interested in Oliver because he wants to experience a thrill from his pain. Oliver really is just a curiosity, a bauble to a rich young man who's vain enough to know how to behave in public so that he appears good. Oliver takes advantage of this though, and so in the end their relationship becomes a nice tale of mutual abuse which the rich and the poor, and the middle class are still poor by comparison, afflict on one another. I hadn't seen Elordi in anything prior to this. I still need to check out Priscilla and had no interest in Euphoria, so I was pleasantly surprised. Obviously he can play sexy and charming. Australians have that in our blood, alongside alcoholism. But the way he uses his body indicates to us whether the words he's speaking are sincere or not. And so he comes out of Saltburn as someone I'll be interested to see more of. The rest of the ensemble are all great, it goes without saying. Richard E. Grant and Rosamund Pike will never go without work because they're so talented, and everything they give us after Felix passes was exquisite. That praise is also for the younger actors like Archie Madekwe and Alison Oliver too. It seems to me Hollywood has a wealth of talented performers and a dearth of brilliant writers, and so the heavy lifting in most films falls upon the actors' shoulders. Now they handle that burden with grace most of the time, but it really isn't the way things should be. Which brings me to the criticism. Fennell did a mediocre job with this script. Yes, the dialogue is crisp, and as I'll talk about shortly, examining resentment amongst the poor and middle class is very interesting, but the movie is exactly as expected. Everything plays out as you can guess from the opening 10 minutes. The only surprise was period cunnilingus. May God bless Emerald for that. Fennell could have waited another year or two and worked on the script some more, toiling away until it became something unique. But she chose to release it as is, and so you get an average story. Good, absolutely, yet forgettable. It's Mr. Ripley meets Monty Python with some horny mum fantasies thrown on top. That's Saltburn. Now one might argue that the Talented Mr. Ripley was made in the 90s and is based on a book from the 50s, and Monty Python is from the 60s and 70s, and so the target audience hasn't seen it. It's derivative, but no one is going to notice. So shut up, you cunt! Why can't you just be a cool dude and keep your thoughts to yourself? And that's probably true. Most won't sit there thinking, I've seen this one before, but those who will notice are probably the ones ones you'd like to impress more so than the casuals. That criticism really does cover the film, as the screenplay is the beating heart of any movie, so there isn't a need for me to hammer it any further. Now it's time to unwind. I'd stop watching here if you don't like an unvarnished mind digressing with unwavering aplomb. I'm giving you all a moment to click off because everything from now on is a jam sesh and most of you probably won't enjoy it. Okay? 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Consider this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. "Nothing on earth consumes a man more quickly than the passion of resentment." People can be absolute cunts. Not like me, I'm a good cunt, and certainly Margot Robbie has a good, never mind, because they are all full of resentment. Regardless of wealth, we all feel a deep pull to imbibe of that dark and bitter wine, but the poor and middle class take it to a far higher level. And so you need to bear in mind that these types view the world completely differently from how a wealthy and successful person does. They don't want to win and help win. They don't have noble ideas. They don't think about fanciful notions like colonizing Mars. They're savages or soulless normies. And because they're hopeless with few redeeming qualities, they like to lash out. Crabs in a bucket, tall poppy syndrome. Call it what you want, it's soul-crushing to be surrounded by resentment. And the unwashed masses revel in that filth like a pig in its own muck. Also, Tom Ackerley needs to receive an Oscar for Best Pickup Artist in Hollywood. Can you imagine how charming you'd have to be to seduce Margot Robbie and then keep her? There's plenty of rich and handsome dudes out there, so Tom would be fighting every day to keep Dick and Harry from stealing her away. Most men can't be trusted around a good-looking woman, and horny blokes are shooting their shot all over the internet and in their bedrooms. So the pressure he's under would be intense. How does he sleep at night? Oh, right. Of course. I'm sorry. If anyone's still watching this, then I hope you're up for a bit of fun. I don't think Hollywood would ever accept a man like me, so I figure I might as well cut loose on the internet. Most people in that town seem like cowards, too afraid to be themselves anyway, and I hate that stuff. Though I suppose I'd be more careful too if I had something to lose. Which brings us back to Saltburn. Did you really think I was just waffling? I mean, I was, yes, but it was with a goal in mind, like stumbling home drunk. I'll get there in the end, and I might piss myself along the way, but I'll get there. So the Cattons foolishly behaved in Saltburn like a broke Aussie because they failed to realise how dangerous an interloper like Oliver can be. A being of pure malevolent energy who resents you for having what he wants, but probably could never get because he lacks social skills or common sense or a work ethic, or is just a plain old piece of shit. The rich Brits want to appear nice and are unfailingly polite and soft-spoken, but to survive and keep what you have worked so hard to possess requires a great deal of savvy. Any kind of success attracts jealous backbiting, like Fennell received recently from Yossman. And between you and me, I think Yossman wants to be a famous writer and his angry Fennell has that Oscar. Now you could say the same thing of me, but at least I brought receipts. Ripley, Python, avant-garde, and character descriptions. I'm not being petty. I genuinely think her work was average and I can argue my point. Yossman's article was petty. The pretty girls didn't invite me to the super secret lesbian slumber party at Oxford. Wah! God, I hope that's a thing. Jealousy comes with the territory, even amongst the successful. Just look at all the Hollywood people who can barely contain their rage at the Oscars when they're looked over. You sit at home and you watch the rictus grin of the slighted genius slither over their face as they know they must play nice for the camera, but what they really want to do is scream, "Fuck off! I'm better than that fucking retard!" And so you need very good friends and family who can support you through life. Furthermore, it's also why you need to be harsh, cruel even, if you want to survive, and so there's no polite way to say it. And thus, I must just say it, a wealthy person shouldn't be generous because the hand you hold out in kindness will likely be bitten off by the resentful. You can bring water to an African nation and then be accused of acting improperly by an incompetent government for, well, highlighting how incompetent that government is through your kindness. Most people do not see gifts as gifts, for they live in the land of the petty and bitter. This is a sad truth of life, and only very rarely throughout history has there been a community of exceptional individuals who push one another to ever greater heights free from jealousy. It seems to be a flaw in our DNA. And so you need to be very careful when you're at the top, and the British culture of being oh so polite is a weakness that can be exploited, which is taken to extreme lengths in Saltburn. But I would imagine you already got that idea. Now let's talk about dysgenics, not amongst the masses as that's self-evident, but amongst the rich. It's a thorny subject that tends to inspire some midwit to ask, so do you like throwing a Roman while goose-stepping through Brandenburg Gate? They wouldn't be as articulate as that though, they'd just call you a Nazi. And they'd be right, for I am not afflicted by zealous ignorance. Okay, I admit, that wasn't my best work. This review is low effort anyway, like I'd throw my pearls before swine on the internet. You get the backwash, and I know you love it, you dirty little freak. You're looking at like 6 to 8 hours worth of work, spread out over a few days because I have other things on my mind, mostly Margot Robbie's anyway. Now let's venture forth with certainty that our spirits will live on long after we're murdered by an ignorant mob who can't see beyond their noses at the light radiating from another's soul. Dysgenics refers to, according to the ever-reliable Wikipedia, the decrease in prevalence of traits deemed to be either socially desirable or well adapted to their environment due to selective pressure disfavoring the reproduction of those traits. Okay, I'll say it another way. Shit that makes you weak is compounded over time into a razor-sharp shit crystal family heirloom that cuts the hand of your great-grandkids because you were a dumb shit. And in Saltburn, well-to-do types have been bred to be trusting, polite, charitable, wiry or obese instead of battle-ready, and so on and so forth in order to fit in amongst the genteel elite. Totally fine in a time of peace or when secure in your rural estate. But that'll get you killed outside of the hermetically sealed bubble, or if a viper enters the bubble under false pretenses and you're too foolish to see it. Isn't it amazing that comfort can destroy?
Jesus cost to your strength. Victory has defeated you.
Everyone alive today seeks ever greater degrees of happiness via innumerable panaceas, and yet it robs them of something far more life-affirming in the end. Fulfillment by overcoming hardship. A hard life is more pleasurable in the end than... No, I've made the joke enough times now. I'm not going to say it. We all know she's hot. Let's just move on. Remember Felix not cleaning his room? Oh no, I'm starting to sound like Jordan Peterson. Remember Farley showing up late to a meeting? Remember Emerald misspelling avant-garde? The rich have grown weak by forgetting to work on the little tough things in life, the tedious details, and this leaves them at risk of destruction in a bigger way, especially if exaggerated to its logical conclusion in a fictional context like we see with Saltburn. You suffer in the gym and you end up looking like Chris Bumstead. Kinda. You suffer in life and you end up richer than anybody. Kinda. Suffering is God's gift to those with potential, and it is essential for one's progress in life, provided you don't give up or have a psychotic break, and it's also essential for remaining at the peak of the pyramid. If the Cattons had invited hardship into their lives, then they wouldn't have been so easily blindsided by the snake in the grass. As a brief aside, it's also why having a critic like me is such a blessing. I'll rip you a new one, and that stops you from becoming lazy, like Emerald was with her character descriptions. I'm willing to bet big money she triple checks her work moving forward, because between you and me, I have a feeling she saw my tweets. Seriously, I'm pretty sure she was lurking. It's an intuition, but I don't know. See, I might be a cunt, but I'm the good kind. Like a personal trainer who calls you fat or no, it's done. It's done. Okay, mate? You always take the joke too far. I'm not saying it's a fun thing to suffer, it sucks, and there's no joy in the burden. But those who overcome have attributes you don't see every day, be it six-pack or a phenomenal wit. And that can change the world, or at the very least leave you better off than you could have ever imagined prior to the start of the agonizing journey. Unfortunately for the Cattons, they became indolent, spiritually fat, and so they were easily destroyed by Quick and his clever schemes. They lost the savage nature essential for survival, and at that point, it's all over Red Rover. They could not protect the watering hole their ancestors fought for due to the enervating comfort they had enjoyed from supping at readily available aqua. And so they lost their wealth and their bloodline was irrevocably destroyed, which is of far greater importance than money. If you don't understand that family is everything, then you're a fucking moron. How else do you make a bit of heaven here on Earth? There's nothing particularly wrong in Quick's behavior as well. I mean, I'm not saying go kill people, but you're a fool if you think there aren't wolves circling the camp, and you don't deserve to stay rich if you fail to keep your guard up. So to all the Cattons out there, stay sharp or lose everything. It is what it is. The only way to keep what you've earned is to then ensure each generation remains as savvy as the generation that made the wealth in the first place. Like the Rothschilds. How to keep the pressure on to ensure a diamond doesn't turn back into coal is an unending conversation. Though it seems to me that the best play is to have an endeavour which cannot be completed in one lifetime. A vision so big and so impossible that you need to plan centuries into the future and have a patriarch who can inspire his progeny from beyond the grave to get it done. This keeps everyone focused on something which makes their privileged life difficult by choice, and so protects them from the corruption of peace. Now let's talk about Farley. He's presented as a jerk, and yeah, he is, but he knows that something isn't right with Quick. He's still foolish and so he's defeated in the end, but the suffering he endured with a shitty mum and simply being American, which naturally makes one more intense, all enables a degree of primal awareness. He insults Oliver at the very start of the film because he can sense a predator and he knows he needs to establish a boundary. A dig at Quick's jacket is just another way of saying, don't fuck with me, mate, I see you. Anyone who has had some degree of hardship can spot danger a mile away. The rich don't have this, whether in general or just in the world of Saltburn, and that's great. No one should live with high cortisol levels, but you need it to survive in the world we do live in, and so it can bite you in the backside when you lose perspective. A woman can know peace if she's in the arms of a man who knows how to fight. Men, though, we don't have anyone to protect us, except for maybe God. And he's a tough one to figure out. For the audience, we begin on Oliver's side and interpret these barbs from Farley as him being a dick. But in hindsight, he's the only one alive to the realities of this earth and willing to talk about it. If the foolish Cattons had a familial culture which preferred harsh truths instead of sweet lies, then they wouldn't have been destroyed by the demon made flesh in Oliver Quick. As I said earlier, this element at the very end of the film, even if obvious from the start because it's just Mr. Ripley, and the sex scenes were interesting parts of the script, and so credit where credit is due. Anyway friends, I've run out of steam and want to go smoke a cigarette, so I'll finish my review here. Saltburn is a good picture made by the talented Emerald Fennell, and she is talented, so please don't misinterpret my words. But the film is ultimately scuttled by its derivative and lazy storytelling. I'd say wait to watch it on streaming if you're the type who watches a lot of movies, because you've seen this one before. Thanks for watching, and remember to stay safe out there.
We surrounded by the fucking wolves.